was. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome inside the Browns beat. It is another cold, dreary, freezing, although I was told it was warm today compared to the recent days.
Yeah.
But still, a January. Can you believe it's already January 21st here in Northeast Ohio? We were in the dead of winter, but we're warm in here on Inside the Browns Beat, and we've got a great show planned for you. We're going to start things off. Me and Fred just talking about maybe some updates, maybe clarifying a few things. We've had a lot of questions. I spent my whole day when I had breaks at work going in and out of Ask the Insiders at the OBR.com, which, by the way, look at this for a transition, OBR.com. If you're not subscribed to the OBR.com, boom, there's a QR code. Get over to the OBR.com, scan that QR code, and you can get subscribed in just minutes. It is a great deal, and it is the oldest, largest, and best Cleveland Browns community that you're going to get. So get over to the OBR.com and hit subscribe. But hanging out there all day, lots of people with questions. The coaching search rolls on. Some guys are off the board. Some guys have taken themselves off the board. And there's just a lot going on. So we're going to get into all of it. And then a little bit later in the show, we are going to be joined by our first ever guest on Inside the Browns Beat. And he's going to join us tonight after the season. But Mark Schwab is going to come in from Channel 19, fellow Rocky River guy. That seems to be a theme of the show. But we're going to talk about all things Browns with Schwabi, and you know he's going to have some opinions. Schwabi always has opinions. So big time show going with you tonight, and we're so glad that you decided to join us. With you, as always, I'm your host, Michael Keefe. Joining me, my co-host, Fred Greetham. And Fred, how's life? I mean, inside the building, the Browns building, how's things going right now? How's the vibe going right now?
You know, we're not in there like we are at the season. We probably won't be back in there until they announce and they have a press conference. But in talking to people in and around the building, I think, I think they're saying the right things, but they have to be a little frustrated, especially with just the way things are going, in the Rooney Rule thing, like you would have thought some of that stuff would have been taken care of. To our knowledge, there's been nothing. They've been open in their interviews saying who they've interviewed, and there's really been no indication that they have met the Rooney Rule, where you have to have 2 face-to-face in-person meetings. A lot of people thought McDaniel would have been one, but that was not in person. That was on a Zoom call or not in person. Right. And so here they are. If they wanted to hire somebody today, they legally can't do it. So I don't know how this plays out. The Shield House, I think they wanted to talk to him again anyway, but you can't until after Sunday's game with the Rams. And if they make it to Super Bowl, they give them a little window.
Yeah.
If they lose, obviously you can interview them, but even if they wanted to hire him on the spot, unless they have another candidate interviewed, you still have to do in person, 2 of them. So that's where a little confusion is, and you're trying to figure, okay, as organized as this group has always been, you'd think they would have. So something threw them for a loop, I think, somewhere along the line.
Listen, first of all, we're going to dive in to the Rooney Rule thing, okay? We're gonna if you're watching this, we're gonna jump in. If you're an OBR subscriber, if you've been at Ask the Insiders, you know it's been some people are a little testy about the Rooney Rule. We're gonna try to break this thing down because I think there's a lot of nuance that people aren't really thinking about. But we'll get into that. We'll get into some of the guys that are not coming that we know for sure. We'll get into some recent news, or at least reports that involve the Browns coaching staff and so much more. But before we get into all of it, I do want to just really quickly, first of all, I'm going to do this early, but I want to give a shout out. You're hanging out with us here, 7:00. We love it. After the show, get yourself a break, go to the bathroom, grab yourself a drink, come back for Garage Beers at 9:00. We've got our buddy Cameron Justice coming to hang out with us, talk a little bit more Browns. Plus, we'll get into the Cavs and the Guardians and all that stuff too. But Cameron Justice joining us on Garage Beers at 9:00. So you don't want to miss that. We know how awesome Cameron is. She's been on with us. We've had her on Garage Beers several times, and she's hanging out with us tonight. So get your beers and come to Garage Beers at 9. Also, we just want to say this. One, if you haven't seen it on the socials, just do us a favor. We created a page on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it for the show. And the handle is @BrownsBeatOBR. So just BrownsBeatOBR. If you look that up, you will find our show. I think there's like 4 followers right now because we just haven't blasted it out too much yet. But please do yourself a favor and go follow the show. Go follow the show @BrownsBeatOBR. And you're going to want to do that because we're not going to give everything away right now, but there's going to be a little bit of a format change to the show throughout the entire offseason. It would be a heavy ask, especially for Fred Greetham, to say, let's get a different guest every week to talk about things, especially in the weeks where there isn't stuff going on. So we're going to have a little bit of a format change, but that format change is going to include you more heavily. This is going to get more interactive, more heavily. So again, we'll still have guests on when we can, but especially in the weeks where we don't have guests, we've got some cool ideas that we're going to throw out at you, and it's all going to happen on that Twitter page, or we'll try to blast it out on the OBR.com as well. So if you're on the Twitter, this is also WFF, but apparently doesn't really use that service. This doesn't help you then. But if you are on Twitter, go over and follow the show @BrownsBeatOBR. All right.
Well, hey, form an account, follow Mike and me, and Brownsbeat. There you go.
Do it, all of it. All right, Fred, let's dive into this, and let's just rip the Band-Aid off, all right? Let's rip off the Band-Aid with the Rooney Rule. And let's just provide clarity to this situation. Because the Rooney Rule has changed over the years. It used to just be if you talk to an applicant of color, then you've satisfied the Rooney Rule, boom, you move on. And that is not what the rule is anymore. So, Fred, do you have the in-depth? I've got them, but do you have the in-depth? Do you want to explain the Rooney Rule? Do you want me to do it?
Go ahead, and then I'll make a comment.
Okay. So now what the Rooney Rule says is this. And it changes by position, but for head coaches, which is really what we're interested in at this point in the conversation, you have to have in-person interviews with at least 2 minority candidates. And that could be person of color, that could be a female, that's included now in this, but you have to, for a head coaching position, have in-person conversations with 2 minority candidates in order to fulfill the rule. The Zoom calls, the virtual things do not count, which is why I will say I understand the tizzy that a lot of fans went into when Mike McDaniel decided to pull his name, because Mike McDaniel is biracial, and he would satisfy part of the Rooney Rule for the Browns. So if nothing else, even if you didn't think they were going to go forward with him, you thought, all right, well, that interview at least satisfies that. So when he pulls out, when he says, you know what, I'm not going to come to the Browns, and then you know that they talked to Aiden Dirty, who I think would satisfy, but it doesn't sound like they're going for a second interview with Aiden Dirty, at least not yet. And then you've got, like you said, Shieldhouse from out in LA. We know they're going to have a second interview with him. Those were the only other 2 minority candidates that we know of that the Cleveland Browns have talked to. And so the Browns now are in a position where right now they only have 1 scheduled in-person interview with somebody that will satisfy the Rooney Rule. Now, here's the nuance that I want to talk about, Fred, real quick. I think the way fans talk about it and the way people in the building approach it, namely Andrew Berry, is going to be a very different thing. Because I think a lot of fans talk about the Rooney Rule like it's just something that you have to satisfy. And so, like, look at the Giants. They must have interviewed a couple guys, satisfied the Rooney Rule, boom, went and got John Harbaugh. And I think when like they probably knew they were bringing in John Harbaugh. They probably had that first initial conversation and we're like, cool, we know what's going on. And in that circumstance, then you really don't have a choice but to do that. But in other circumstances, you're not trying to waste time either. You're trying to find good candidates. Like the Browns are trying to find good candidates for head coaching. And yeah, sometimes, you're going to have to live by the NFL's rules and the obligations that they put in front of you. But, I don't think Andrew Berry, being a man of color himself, is just trying to load up a couple African-American guys just to satisfy the Rooney Rule so he can go out and hire Mike. I don't even know. Mike McCarthy or something like that. Like, I get the impression that he's being very deliberate about who he's talking to. They're not talking to people they're not super interested in. That's why you've seen a lot of the guys that have gotten hired at this point aren't even guys they really talk to. But I don't know. I want to make sure people know. And then the other caveat to it is you have to talk to two people of color or minorities regardless of what you wind up doing. So a lot of people have asked that question. If they were to bring in Shieldhouse and he's your next head coach, do they still have to interview a second minority person of color, whatever? The answer is yes. They have to talk to two. They have to have in-person interviews with two. So, Fred, you said you had some interjections there. Let me know what else you want to add into that.
Well, not a whole lot on the technical, but basically, if I was doing it in my Kevin Stefanski answer the question, I understand the question, Mike, but really the nuances there, the Browns have put themselves in a position. They have minorities on their staff that they could have, they gave interviews to Tommy Reese and obviously Jim Schwartz.
Yep.
There were several others. You can do that. And I'm not saying, but right now, it's going to be pretty obvious if they get a call, unless they've contacted these people before. If you're, out west or wherever you are and you get a call, they kind of know what's going on. I'm just flying in the middle of January for to say I got an interview. And so I understand the whole principle of the Rooney Rule. And sure, I think we're kind of a little past some of those things. If I wanted to hire Mike Keefe, why can't I hire Mike Keefe? Why do I have to talk to, 7 other people or 2 other people or whatever? But that's what they got. And they're in that position. So yes, I give credit. Mary Kay, when was on here a couple weeks ago, she said, they had to do 2. And I thought it was just 1. And I thought McDaniel already counted.
Right.
And I didn't know that I don't know why in person matters, to be honest, either. Other than, somebody's physically got to get on a plane or something.
That one to me is the one that kills me. Why does it have to be in person? It's 2026. Like a conversation's a conversation. Why does it have to be in person? And frankly, that to me is both on the organizational side and the candidate side. Why are you going to tell a guy that he's got to, like, let's say it's Mike McDaniel. Why does he have to fly to Cleveland, or why do you have to fly to him? Just have the conversation. I don't want to get in. Here's what I don't want to do. The Rooney Rule exists. And I know I will start getting worked up a little bit, and I think other people will, and on both sides of the conversation. I'm not really here to debate the merits of the Rooney Rule. It exists. It is the framework they have to deal with. So I'm not going to I see it in the comments a little bit. I'm not diving into whether I think the Rooney Rule is a good idea or not. I'm not diving into why do they do it. It is the rule, and it's what they have to abide by. Having said that, though, Fred, I thought a lot about your question. And let me kind of throw what my retort to that would be. If you are a minority coach in the NFL, maybe a former player, maybe a female, whatever, and the Browns were to call you tomorrow, let's say you're with Denver or you're with, I don't care, who cares, just pick a team. You're with Dallas, whatever. And the Browns call you tomorrow and say, hey, we'd like to fly down and talk to you about our head coaching position. Do you know Do you know right off the bat that that may be something that they're doing to satisfy the Rooney Rule? Yeah, you probably have that inkling. Although, I would throw it back to Andrew Barry. Like, again, I doubt Andrew Barry is just trying to sabotage his way around the Rooney Rule. But having said that, and Pat Shea hit on it in the comments, am I going to take that interview? 100% every time. And I think everybody should take that interview. I think anytime any NFL team says, "Hey, we want to talk to you about our head coaching position," even if you think they're not going to give you the job, you take it. And why, Fred? Because you don't know when that general manager is going to move to a different place and you really impressed him in that interview. You don't know when the assistant general manager is going to get hired as the general manager at another place and you really impressed in that interview. Maybe that team already has their heart set on some other candidate, but maybe you walk in the door and give the world's greatest interview. And it may not change that team's mind, but you're in a room of people and they talk to each other. And you may have a situation where it's Quezzy up in Minnesota, and again, this isn't the best situation because I think Kevin O'Connell's pretty safe, but you might have a situation where you could flip it. Andrew Barry could call Quezzy up in Minnesota and say, "Hey, have you talked to anybody that you really loved? Like a Udinsky? Like, I don't know why people are having trouble connecting those dots. Have you talked to anybody you really love? And if you went and did that interview and you killed it, then you're putting your foot in the door somewhere else." So, I do think some places do it just to get it over with. I don't think the Browns are like that. But if you're a candidate, you take the interview every time, 100% every time.
Yeah. It's exactly right. And that's part of the reason to have that rule. It opens up an opportunity for somebody now or later. It's just, I think you could have done that earlier in the process so it doesn't look so obvious at this point. And I guess that was my bad. You can't count, okay, we got McDaniel, we got Shieldhouse, we're done. Because there's going to be people get hired, along the way. And obviously McDaniel feels he's got good opportunities elsewhere. And I think we'll see how it all works out. But it's, especially with some of these better jobs opening up later, I mean, it blows my mind, like Sean McDermott.
Yeah.
Geez, you didn't go to the Super Bowl. You're out,
Right.
Mike Tomlin, John Harbaugh, those all moved to those are more appealing openings. So if somebody has a chance to go to the Bills with Josh Allen, or somebody has a chance to go to the Steelers, maybe they would think that because of the longevity or whatever, or the Ravens because they got Lamar Jackson. That just, could shoot yourself in the foot, so to say, losing out on somebody because you didn't have this taken care of.
We did get a good question in the comments that I also got. We got this asked and actually kind of on our site. I know Lane provided more clarity on this, but the question from Justin Ames 2397 in the comments says, could they have interviewed college coaches? They just don't want their name out there. Yes, 100%. And they don't have to publicly say we interviewed this guy or that guy because, again, on the college side of things, now you're worried about, the rumor gets out there that you're talking to NFL teams and the transfer portal and guys are going to start moving and shaking and all that. So, yes, absolutely. And yes, any coaching candidate, any minority coaching candidate, just to go back to the Rooney Rule, anybody you talk to for that position satisfies the rule. So if they have an in-person conversation, like if they were to, I don't have any information that they've talked to Marcus Freeman, so please don't run with this. But if they were to have gone over to South Bend and talked to Marcus Freeman and said, "Hey, can we talk to you about our job?" and they had an in-person interview with him, that would count, and they can do that, and they don't have to say anything about it. So, yes, the answer to that question is 100%. Do we know that they've done that? No, I have no indication. Fred, I don't know. Have you heard of them doing any of that, or would that be just super under wraps?
I haven't heard of any of that. Usually that kind of stuff leaks out one way or the other. When Freeman, for example, was being linked to some names, he came out and shot it down or somewhere through back channels. But, the whole system especially colleges. It's a little different in the pros, but colleges where they force the coaches almost to lie, like Mike, I will take care of your son and I'm going to be there and you can trust me. Meanwhile, they're going
Right.
somewhere else and they already know that,
Right.
and and then it's like wink, wink. When I get there, come with me, and but that's not, I'm sure this kind of stuff goes on. There's been rumors already that the Browns have, are doing something, but you have all kinds of things going around. It's just where they're at. I mean, this hopefully they can get through this week and they're ready to make a move next week, because you just feel like, okay. But on one aspect, even if they really want to hire Jim Schwartz right now, or Todd Monken right now, or Udinski, on Friday, or Jesse Minter, they can't do it. And you're hearing Minter's leading, maybe with the Steelers or the Ravens. And so are you going to miss out because you didn't have this ready to go?
And can I, I'm just going to respond to that question. The answer is no. If they had a candidate right now that they were ready to move with, that they're like, that's our guy, we're bringing him in right now, they would find somebody that would satisfy the rule, they'd be done. Like, that's the other thing on this conversation that I saw from so many fans. And it's illogical. And I want to bring a little bit of logic back into this conversation. It's the same thing that happened with the New York Giants. They identified Harbaugh. They knew they were going to hire Harbaugh from the start, but they found a way to get themselves compliant. If the Browns knew they wanted Shieldhouse or Udinski or Jim Schwartz, and Jim Schwartz is getting an interview in Baltimore, and they're like, oh my gosh, we got to get Jim Schwartz hired, they would find somebody. They would take care of the interview. They would knock it out. This will not hinder the Cleveland Browns. I think what this is showing you, this is showing you is that they are being pragmatic and they are being deliberate in their actions. This isn't about speed. And listen, I was going to talk about this, Fred. Look at the guys that have taken coaching positions now. And obviously some are going to get missed, but you talked about Mike McDaniel. Informed the Browns that he was no longer in the running, and then he went and took the offensive coordinator position with the Chargers. Minter, it sounds like all indications are Jesse Minter is going to go be the head coach of Baltimore. Again, those are the reports. That's not official, but sounds like the reports. But other than that, the rest of the guys that have been hired are not guys that were on the Browns' radar. Or I shouldn't say not on the radar, but they were not near the top of their list. Robert Saleh, head coach of Tennessee. Sweet. That does nothing to the Browns. Obviously, Harbaugh. Everybody wanted Harbaugh, but I think it was just apparent right from the start that there was a love affair with the Giants, and that's where he was going. I think you saw it with the way Miami moved on after they talked to him, where it was like, oh, we're not getting him. He was going to the Giants. So that was a pipe dream, if nothing else, but it was not a realistic thing. So that does nothing to the Browns. Jeff Hafley, the guy from Green Bay that's going to go be the head coach of the Miami Dolphins, does nothing to the Browns, a guy that was not even reported to be talking to them. And then Kevin Stefanski, going to Atlanta. He was their coach. That does nothing to the Browns. Now he takes Tommy Rees with him. I don't think anybody really thought Tommy Rees was going to be the head coach of the Cleveland Browns. So that's the report is that Tommy Rees is going to go be the offensive coordinator for Kevin Stefanski in Atlanta. But again, I don't think it really does anything to the Cleveland Browns. So people feeling this urgency, like they need to hurry up and get their coach already. Why? Plenty of these names, plenty of these guys that they are very interested in, plenty of these guys that they're talking to again, next week or whatever, are still there. They're still available. And you can't live thinking, well, what if Buffalo comes in and does this? Okay, you've got several guys that you're interested in. Mm-hmm. So I think there's this urgency amongst fans. I think it can be fanned by the media a little bit, like, oh my God, they got to get their guy right now because they're going to miss out if they don't. But the reality is, they're sitting, like, I would imagine if we were talking to Andrew Berry right now, and we know he's watching the show. What's up, Andrew? I would imagine if we were talking to him right now, Fred, he would tell us, honestly, that he feels like they're in a really good spot right now. Their candidates are all sitting on the board right in front of them.
Yeah, or ones that are they have a chance to get. Now, what do you think about McDermott?
Listen, and I know our guest has signed in. So as soon as I see him looking ready, maybe he gives us the thumbs up. Oh, he's giving us the thumbs up. Darn it, he dressed up for us. Hold on. I want to bring him in because I know he's got opinions on all of it, and we want to get no shortage of opinions with our special guest tonight. So let's bring him in, and then we'll get back to that question. We're talking about coaches. But joining us tonight, our first ever guest on Inside the Browns Beat, the inaugural show. And now he's wrapping it around to talk to us as we head into this offseason and all that. Very excited to have him from Channel 19 here in Cleveland. It is Mark Schwab. Welcome back Inside the Browns Beat.
What's going on, guys? I'm only dressed up because from here I've got to go right to the studio because I got to do the news tonight. Trust me, I'm not dressing up for your show normally.
Don't things get casual after a certain hour? Oh,
what's that?
I said, don't things get casual down at the studio after a certain hour?
At some point, every once in a while, I might throw on the jeans and leave my hiking boots on or something like that. It's about as casual as it gets.
I'll never forget. I was a freshman at Bowling Green when college game day came to Bowling Green, and it was a total life-changing thing to see Herb Street and Corso and Fowler and those guys. Because I think it was Fowler back then, I believe. We were behind the desk, and to see them all in their sweatpants, but then their suit jackets and ties, but sweatpants underneath. It was a game-changing event.
I did a show one time. Remember Sports Time Ohio?
Oh yeah.
I did a show called Indians Minor League Magazine, and we did it in the middle of summer. And one time it was like 98 degrees. I rolled down with truly business up top, party down below, jacket, shirt, tie, buttoned up. I had the worst cargo shorts you have ever seen in my life, your life. I was wearing the worst pair I've ever had, but nobody saw them. That's what you can do sometimes. If you can, hey, you know what? It's only what the folks will see.
That's exactly right. The little TV I've done, I was kind of shocked. I went on Bruce Drennan on set with him, but guys like Casey Coleman, different ones, and I was like, "You're wearing shorts? You're wearing jeans?" Because that's all that matters. Yeah. To be honest, I got sweats on, with a nice shirt and vest.
Yep.
I think we all look great. This is what we're getting to here. We all look
so
great.
We've been kicking around the Rooney Rule and all that kind of stuff. Where do you think right now they are, Mark, as far as what do you think their best move going forward is from what we know right now?
I feel like Jim Schwartz is their last best realistic option because I don't know why some of these other guys would come here. I don't know why Udinsky would want to hitch his wagon to this, or Shieldhouse even. If those guys like themselves and in the sense that they like, where they're at right now, and they're confident in their ability, of course their coaches are going to be confident. Why wouldn't they just bet on themselves and say, a year from now, I'm going to be back in this cycle and there's going to be an opportunity with a quarterback or playmakers or whatever it is. The Browns have nothing to offer really on the offensive side of the ball, and you're trying to get an offensive head coach. You can lure them in and talk about what you want to do in free agency and things like that. But I don't see a good path to a quarterback where you can say, we have this, right? Like the Ravens, obviously, in Buffalo, they got their guys. The Raiders can at least point to Mendoza and the number one pick. The Cardinals can at least say we have Kyler Murray, or whatever that's worth. The Browns have to sell Shador and Deshaun Watson and the sixth pick, which will probably not get a quarterback. So I think Jim Schwartz is a very legitimate candidate who might take the job. And that might be their best choice because I don't know why any of those other guys would take it. I also feel like they're starting to really get into a pinch now with the Rooney Rule. I don't know who else they're going to talk to.
But anybody. Schwab, can I argue with you for a minute, though? Can I politely argue with you for a minute?
Go for it.
Because I think you made 2 points that I think makes a point of why they would come here.
All right.
One, I think it's a little bit of battered Cleveland syndrome, a little bit. And it's the same thing. Every time the Browns need a new coach, all the conversation is, why would anybody come here? And then people come here. And sometimes they get their top pick and sometimes they don't. Remember Hugh Jackson? Hugh Jackson was the guy they wanted from the jump. Didn't work out that great. But you talk about these guys are confident. They believe in their abilities. That's why they come here. I can coach that team. I can work with these guys. I can implement my system. And now I've got the reins. I'm the boss. So I can do what I want the way I want to do it. And I can build this. And I can do that. Like, there's got to be part. You talked about coaches being competitive and having that drive. Like, that has to be part of it, doesn't it?
Yeah, but think about it. You got me thinking now because you brought up Hugh. Let's just walk it back. So before this, they had Stefanski. They were the only ones interested in Kevin Stefanski. So he really didn't have a choice. If he wanted to be a head coach, he was going to come here or go nowhere because no one had even talked about him, I think, even the previous year. Before that was Freddie Kitchens. That was a joke. Nobody wanted him. Then you had Hugh. And I think before Hugh might have been Mike Pettin, another guy that I don't know if anyone wanted. I mean, I don't know. Other than Hugh is correct. We laugh at it now. But in the moment, it was considered a great hire. Otherwise, I don't know how many times they've sold a guy and like, look what we have. They can do that with Jim Schwartz because they got Myles Garrett. He knows the way that things roll on that side of the ball. But yeah, I don't know, man. You're right. Guys, there is an arrogance that say, I can fix that. But I don't know if they're so arrogant that they can look at this and say, oh yeah, I can fix that.
That's why I've all along have stayed with Jim Schwartz because nobody else is really beating down the door for him. And I mean, after he was coach of the year, assistant coach of the year, and they went to the playoffs, you'd think he'd be really hot. They were the number one defense then. He didn't get any interviews that time. He got one this time, but that you don't know how serious the Ravens were. So now, well, yeah, counting the Browns and the Ravens. And so here you are. Your closest path, in my opinion, is the defense. You got that there. If you compare him with one of these up and coming guys, but that's to me the selling point. You know, would they take it with a blank canvas? And like you said, I've got all these brilliant ideas, and everybody thinks they're the one that are going to turn things around. And so that's the sales point. I think if they think a year from now, a lot of them are becoming free agents. Like Ben Johnson, I think, kind of did that. He didn't take anything until Caleb Williams and the Bears came along. And then that was attractive. And so the same thing could be in the mind of Yudzinski or Shieldhouse or whoever else is out there. And so
that's also betting on themselves a little bit, like I talked about, you know, where it's like, I'll be back in this. You know, we're not going to regress with Trevor Lawrence. We're not going to regress with Stafford and company. I'll be back in this a year from now. I'll bet on myself. I'll wait a year, and we'll see what's in the offing. I don't know. I don't know who. Like if you said who's going to be the next head coach, I usually have we kind of have like a favorite. This guy. I don't know if I really have one. Maybe Jim Schwartz. Other than that, I don't know. This is so there's been so many openings. There's been like 10, right? And there's been so many
1/3 of the NFL.
Yeah, that's wild. I mean, I know we always say every year it's weird. It's usually not 10 teams firing a coach weird.
Yeah, but and just to go back, because I don't want to sound like an idiot here. The Browns have been the picture of misery for 30 years. We know this. We know this. But I also think some of the things you said also point to why, like, take a young guy like Udinski. And again, I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm a Grant Udinski expert, like so many people are trying to act like they are. No, you're not. but I also think part of the selling point to him is, hey, we got this defense. It's awesome. Do we know who the coordinator? If I have to base my decision on my head coach based on who the coordinator is going to be, that's a problem. Bring in a different coordinator. Who cares? Because you still have Myles Garrett and you still have Carson Schlesinger. Maybe you get JOK and you still have Denzel Ward. And you still have one of the best, most talented defenses out there. If I'm looking at a young offensive coach, I'm going, hey, see that side of the ball? It's really good. We need you. We need you to get your hand in over there so that they know you. But we need you to fix us over here too. Like I think it's appealing to even a young offensive guy.
there's a joke here, and then there's a serious part of it. The joke is this is the second time in like the last 9 months they've had to sell themselves to somebody. The first was Myles Garrett, where we all know the BS sales job was, we're going to give you $40 million a year to not say you want out of here. And then he's like, yeah, that's great. Now they actually have to sell themselves on somebody on this. But, you could, like, here's a name. I'm just going to throw a name out there. Geno Smith, right? They're going to go and draft Mendoza, and the Raiders line was a mess this year. I don't think Geno Smith is amazing, but Geno Smith was not the entire problem there. So let's say they go to these guys, hey, we're going to draft, an offensive lineman or two. We're going to do a lot in free agency and draft to address receiver and O-line. We're going to trade for Geno Smith, or we're going to make, they're going to try to get Smith, or it's somebody like that. They'll throw 2-3 names out there. Can you work with that, with this defense, until we can find a quarterback of the future? Okay, that's what they have to sell them on. They have to find the quarterback that for some reason nobody else wants, that can also win, which is hard. But when you have the defense that you were saying you package the sales job around that, well, now it's not like you got to go win 42-35 with, whether it's Geno Smith or whoever it is that they're going to go try to get.
But I think the last thing I'll say on this is I think this is a good time to be having to make that exact sales pitch, whether it's Geno Smith or whether it's maybe Mac Jones sitting behind Brock Purdy out there in San Francisco. Maybe you could make a deal for him. Maybe it is one of those reclamation projects, because what have we been watching in the NFL over these past several years? We've been watching these reclamation project guys go have these monster years. Look at Sam Darnold. Look at Sam Darnold out in Seattle. Look at Geno Smith did it in Seattle.
Yep.
Look at Baker, right? So we've had a pretty consistent teams having success doing that exact thing.
They need to go get Jameis Winston.
Oh God.
I want to throw something out and see what you think of this. I feel that a lot of this comes down to, and they may never say this, but how Andrew Berry, Jimmy Haslam are looking at this. We all know Haslam's affinity for Arch Manning or the future quarterback. If you bring in a 30-year-old or whatever, 35, that have never been a head coach. I listened to Mike Pettin today on an interview. He said he wanted to coach. He had no idea. When you're a head coach, so many things are on your desk. You never even get to the coach. And do you want to put one of these young kids that have never really even done anything like that in charge of the whole? They're more suited to be the offensive coordinator and put together the offensive scheme. If you go to win next year, you're never going to solve this quarterback position. We saw here, everybody's excited, the last 2 wins, but it cost them Mendoza basically, because they would have had the number 1 pick. I think they would have tied with the Raiders and had the tiebreaker. Maybe the Raiders would have lost on purpose. But all that being said, I think they can't ever say these things in an interview, but if you hire a 30-year-old, you probably will go 1-16 or 2-15, and then you can pair him with a quarterback. But if you are trying to win, which they should be, then you go with Schwartz, you might win 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 games, and you can't get the quarterback solved. I read some today, John Lynch and Shanahan both said, I don't see a world where Mac Jones isn't on our team next year, so that can change. Yep. But
you offer that trade package, there's the world.
Yeah, so that's my thing, is these are things that I don't know if Haslam, even like last year, they had to know they weren't going to the playoffs when they put 14 rookies on the team, but they said, we're here to win, and all the right things. But you start 2 rookie quarterbacks in 13 of the 17 games, and they weren't even number 1 picks. So
weren't even number 2.
I just think, yeah.
No,
so,
you're right. They're stuck where they have the defense to win, and they're not announcing like a full rebuild or anything like that. So you've got to try to find and build a championship caliber offense, which doesn't have to be elite if you have a championship caliber defense, but it still has to get the job done. You have to find a way to do this without having a reasonable path, I would say, to a solve on the most important position in all of sports. They're back at it again, where they are right now, what appears to be in a one quarterback draft. It is January. That could change. Maybe Simpson goes through the roof or something, and now he's suddenly a top 10 pick, but I'd be surprised by that. But you're back to where there's a one quarterback draft and you're on the outside looking in. That's rare that we've had two of those in a row, but that's where we're at. And usually picking 6 and with an extra first in your back pocket, you guys know the way this works. You're in striking distance. They're not this time. So they got to figure it out. I don't know what it is. I don't know what they do. It is a little harder, I think, to talk draft right now because we haven't seen what they've done, what they'll do in free agency.
Right.
I mean, I think both Jimmy Haslam and Andrew Berry made it sound like they're going to be very aggressive on the offensive side of the ball. So we know what they need. They need tackles. They need receivers. They need playmakers. But if you can figure out a lot of that in free agency, I don't know, maybe you trade back again or you trade out and somebody takes the 6 and you pick up a first next year. And maybe you find some weird way to get a bunch of picks for 27, and now you can take a shot at a quarterback again. I don't know. We're just spitballing here, but you've got to. You're not rebuilding, so you want to win. You got a championship caliber defense, or real close to it. You have the worst quarterback room in football, and you have no reasonable way to fix it right now with a championship caliber asset at that position.
Well, and think of this. Here's the positive. You have 3 of the 4 teams in your division in flux. Now it seems like the Steelers always get it right, but they're due, since hiring Chuck Noll, the 3 coaches, you're due to get any of a number. Name the guy the Browns have hired.
Right.
Ravens as well are due to have bad. And even if they get a good one down, maybe they're not ready to hit the road and win next year right off the bat. So that leaves you with the Bengals, who have a great offense, but an injury-prone quarterback and a leaky defense. So do you take your defense and get your offense respectable? That's what I expected them to do this year, and they couldn't even get respectable. And then you think you can win the division. And so that's all it's a play here is it's crazy. When you look at the teams they play next year, I went through it. There's only 4 playoff teams on their schedule next year, and the Steelers are one of them. And they were 10-7, and nobody and the Panthers were 8-9.
Yeah,
I mean, there was only 3 teams with winning records, so it's set up to do something next year, depending on what you do this offseason. And so you can but that's where I said it goes back to philosophical. Are you going for it, or are you gonna tank but not tank? And I think if you want to get the young non-head coach 30-35, they're gonna have to learn, and it might be a long year, and that could set you up though in the long term.
Yeah, once they decided they were not going to trade Myles Garrett, obviously that signaled, no, we're not rebuilding. I'll say this. I don't believe any team is 5 years away. I don't believe any team is really a long ways away. I've seen too many turnaround. These guys, went from the worst team in football to the Super Bowl in 2 years. The Carolina Panthers did that one time. They went from 1-15 to the Super Bowl in 2 years. It can happen. You've got to get the right mix.
Yep.
So it's not. I don't agree with anyone when they say the Browns are 5 years away. That's crazy. Nobody is in the NFL. Usually at most it's 3. You got to be effective, and that's the question we're going to talk about. If the Browns can be effective, they're probably not that far away because nobody's that far away. They've just never been good at being effective.
Look, like you said though, it's such a great point. Look at the number of teams that are in the playoffs this year in the NFL that were last place teams in their division last year.
Yeah,
It is a large number. It happens. Now, again, and I don't want to make this into like, hey, let's talk about what the Browns are going to do next year. There is building that needs to happen, but I do think that's a great point, Mark, that we're not sitting here talking about 5 years.
No, it's not baseball.
It's right. Top 11, the top 11 draft picks in draft order last year, 5 of them made the playoffs this year. And I'm talking about team like the Patriots, they had the 3rd pick, I think, and the Jaguars and the Panthers made it with an 8-9 record, but then you look at the Bears, a lot of them turned it around in one off season, but they all had a quarterback or the path to that. I mean, even Brock Purdy, the 49ers had the 11th pick, but he was a steady influence. Bryce Young, but Caleb Williams emerged, Drake May emerged, and you look, and Trevor Lawrence did what they drafted him to whenever they drafted him. So that's the only missing link, is solving that quarter. We all know that is the quarterback issue, but you can turn it around. And so that's where I don't know what they're also, when one of these guys might say, I'm a big Shadur Sanders fan, I can work with him, or saying, no, I can't work with any of these guys.
Yeah. Or the other thing is maybe, and I'm not saying I think this can happen, but there might be somebody out there that says, I can work with Deshaun Watson. I do wonder. I will phrase this way. I don't believe Deshaun Watson. I think a lot of Deshaun Watson's issues have been on Watson. We've just seen some terrible throws and stuff like that. But I would phrase that I believe there's a non-zero chance that Stefanski was the problem there. That maybe somebody else gets a hold of that guy and he looks like the guy they traded for. Is that likely? No. Am I betting on it? Of course not. No. But I do think it's reasonable to say there's a non-zero chance that we find out a new head coach, new offense fixes that guy. That changes everything. I'm not betting on it. I don't want to, but changes everything if somebody can actually unlock that.
Just what is it, like 7 years since he's been good, though? Like, God,
I think it was 2020.
It's a lot to bank on. That's a lot to bank on.
2020 is he led the NFL in passing. You know, and you're like, I mean, you've seen guys, well, not like Joe Flacco's like that, but guys that, just Phillip Rivers, you're like, how can you've lost so much? I think it was between the ears with him. And I know that's a completely different topic, but I mean, you're right. You've sunk. You still have another 46 million on him. You look all over, he might still be the best guy on your roster, and
I actually think he is the best quarterback on their roster. Yeah. But I think that has more to say with who else is on the roster versus Deshaun. It's him and Gabriel.
That would be interesting in the discussions for head coach if that name comes up. What do you think? What do you want to do? And so
and head coach says, "Can we lock him out? Can we lock him out of the building? Does he have a key? Can we keep him out? Is that fair?
Can we just pay him to go home? Like in Mission Impossible, we want him on a tower somewhere. We'll just mail him his things.
Well, that's what
you take
after he demanded the trade with Houston. They just made him inactive every week. And they very well could be doing that. But I'm just saying right now, do Geno Smith? We don't know what's out there. Ironically, Stefanski finally gets Kirk Cousins. He might say, no, we got to keep him. But I think they were looking to offload some salary down there. And,
cap hit's pretty big on that. I don't know how comfortable that is for Atlanta. But
no.
I mean, those are the names we're talking about. Geno, Kirk Cousins. Shoot. I just
Mac Jones.
Mac Jones is another one. I jokingly said Jameis Winston, but somebody like that, who's got the starting experience that just, I guess you need another crack at it or something like that.
Well, this time last year, Daniel Jones, if we were on the show talking about him, no way. I don't want that guy.
What about Richardson?
Right.
The guy he replaced. I don't know if I want him. I don't know if he's any good, but those are the kind of rocks we're kicking through right now, right?
Well, and that's where like a Sam Darnold, it took him in the right place, right? And then even after his great year in Minnesota, this time last year, I'm going, I still not interested, and then he does it again. He might be in the Super Bowl, leading them to the Super Bowl. And so that's there's guys like that. They have talent or they wouldn't have got picked. You think of Zach Wilson, the number 2 pick in the draft, where's he out there? Is he the next coming out of the blue, or is too many people looked at him and say, no, he's no good? It's just amazing.
Maybe if Jarrett Stidham gets hurt, we can find out if Zach Wilson
is he the third guy there?
That arm.
Oh my
Wow.
Lord. Okay. All right. I want to go back. I want to go back to coaches.
This is where we're at, by the way.
I can't with this anymore. By the way, another coach came off the board, I think, while we were on the air, Fred.
Who?
Brian Flores is not going to be going anywhere. He locked into a new deal to stay as the defensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings. That was my nightmare, was him in Pittsburgh. So I feel really good about that. But a couple questions before we get ready to wrap the show up.
Okay.
Mark, you brought this up, and Fred, Fred, you brought it up. You were talking about young guys, 30, 35. And I have this question that just goes into my head. When you are in the situation the Browns are in, when you are not the franchise right now that can just go say, hey, John Harbaugh, we want you to come here. And he just like, oh, okay. Would you rather get the guy a year too early? Or would you rather wait and take the chance that he's the next hot guy next year?
Because I guy a year too early. Like, get him before he's ready to be a head coach and he's got to stink for a little bit to figure it out.
Well, maybe Udinski. Again, you saw Buffalo put in a thing for him. And again, I don't know anything about him really. I know what I've seen, but like, I don't want to act like an expert. But he's 30. He's young. He's raw. He's only been the OC for a year. But man, the way they talk about him, the way Kevin O'Connell talks about him, the way, again, the friends of the Browns up there in Minnesota talk about him, the way they talk about him in Jacksonville, the way they talk about him everywhere he has been, Tampa, is nothing but rave reviews about this guy. And so I think a lot of people are like, yeah, but he's only 30 and he hasn't done this and he hasn't done that. Well, when you're in the Browns position, do you take the chance that maybe you're a year early? Maybe he's not quite ready yet, but you're going to get that guy that you think is going to be ready. Or do you wait and say, you know, we need to have a more established guy? Like, I don't know that I'm in the boat where I want to say, if I really believe this guy's the next hot head coach in the NFL, maybe he needs a year to adjust or whatever, but like, I'd rather be early on it.
I agree.
Well, that goes back.
Yeah.
You think you're going to win.
Right. And I mean, the guy's 30. I don't know if I care that he's 30. Like, if he's 32, does that make it better? You know, I don't know if, where's that line, I guess is what I'm getting at. A young guy is a young guy. And he just turned 30, I guess, in January. So he's or December or something. I think he just turned 30.
No, last week, the 12th.
Last week? There you go. Last week. So, I mean, that is pretty young, but I don't know if there's a difference between 32 and 30. I don't know. They're the ones that are you know, we go by what we read and kind of the vibe we can get. They're the ones sitting down to talk to the guy. And there's some dudes, you guys have met those folks, that their age doesn't matter. You can tell guys will follow them. And if you get that sense about Udinski or Shieldhouse or any of these, you know, younger guys, I don't care about their age. That's one thing I like about Jim Schwartz. I think he commands respect. People will get in line behind him. You know, you're not going to have an operation like Hugh Jackson or Freddie Kitchens or anything like that. He's going to be respected. I'm not saying Udinski wouldn't be. I'm just saying we know what that is in Jim Schwartz. We don't know about that Udinski and Shieldhouse and Minter even. Let's put him in there. He's a defensive guy, but you know that's the guy. You got to get a feel on that in the room. And if you think, all right, this is a dude somebody's going to get behind, his age is irrelevant, then I don't care about his age. That's where I'm at with that. Which I don't know if it's a good answer, but it is what it is.
I agree with that. Like I said, I think 80-90% of a head coaching job is, you know, stuff coming across your desk. That has nothing to do with coaching. Get a call at 3 a.m. Hey, so-and-so just has a DUI. What are we going to do? You know, and, you know, I've been told that over and over by, you know, they thought they were going to do. That's where I just think if you can get one of these guys to run your offense, assistant head coach, offensive coordinator, that's where, you know, they could really flourish. And if they really take off, you make them the head coach
and then go somewhere else.
Promote them, fire Schwartz or whoever, and make them the head coach if they're that good.
I want to do a little correction and then one last question here. A little correction. Flores did sign a new contract with Minnesota, but apparently they are letting him keep his name in the hat in Pittsburgh. And again, all rumors are indicating right now that Baltimore is going to bring Minter in, but I think he's still a candidate, is Flores in Baltimore. So
why haven't the Browns reached out about Flores, or did they? And he just said, no, thanks.
I don't know. I heard back in mid-season through a back channel that I can't really corroborate said Haslam really liked Flores, and that's, in fact, I was told that he's going to fire Stefanski at the end of the year, and keep in mind Brian Flores.
Okay.
And I never said because there's nothing, but you would have thought for several reasons why you would have brought him in, especially they're in this situation with the Rooney Rule.
Yeah. I don't get it unless he just told him no thanks, and we haven't heard that. But otherwise, they should go talk to that guy.
Yeah, I would like them to talk to him. All right, last thing, Fred, right before Mark came on, you asked a question, and then we got into like Deshaun Watson. But the last name you brought up was Sean McDermott, who gets fired as the head coach of the Buffalo Bills. So Mark and Fred, I guess, both of you guys, when you hear the name Sean McDermott as a head coaching candidate, what comes into your brain?
I mean, obviously, you'd love it if the Browns could talk to him. Don't know if he's going to want to do that. Another one of these guys, I don't know why he would want to come here. Don't know why he'd want to hitch his wagon to this. But he's certainly an attractive candidate to me, as he would be to most organizations. By the way, I'm going to point this out, and then I'll throw up to Fred to make the point. Do you notice when the Browns, Buffalo might be getting some heat for this, but when the Browns fired Stefanski, people ridiculed them because they said, now the best coach on the market is Kevin Stefanski. Well, when the Ravens fired Harbaugh became the best coach on the market. I didn't hear anyone rip the Ravens. Buffalo fires McDermott. He's the best guy available. I don't know how many people are ripping them. It was only the Browns that got ripped for firing the perceived best coach available. Am I right?
That's pretty much the way I take it. And from the 30,000 feet, I'm blown away that everybody thinks Stefanski, everybody was interviewing him and they were fighting over him, and I'm like, we talked to Bailey. That's a friend of Garage Beers. Bailey Burmeister was on our Off the Leash last night. There's a little shameless plug. But she said they love him, so, in Atlanta. And I don't know how you sell an 8-26 last 2 years, but everybody was hot to trot for him. It sure seemed like.
And they're bringing in Reese. I mean, Callahan, I get, because he's a big name. But they've basically said, give us that Cleveland offensive coaching staff.
Let's get that 16.2 a game in our offense.
It's not like they got Peyton Manning there under center. They got a lot of unknown at quarterback.
Yeah.
They've got
their best quarterback might be running the team now. He could say, "Hey, Matt, will you want to play this week?"
Yeah, right. I don't
activate Matt.
Get
Matty.
Matty Ice.
Man, well, listen. It feels like we're miles and miles away from a resolution, but the fact of the matter is we're probably not. We're probably a week or so away from really having an idea of where this is going to go with the Cleveland Browns. But again, they're being pragmatic. They're taking their time. And we got some good input here from our buddy, Mark Schwab. Mark, it was great having you on. It was great arguing a little bit with you, but also listening to you make great points about the Cleveland Browns. And we're going to let you go get to the studio in your fine dressed attire for your broadcast tonight. But we appreciate you coming on. We appreciate you as the forever inaugural guest on Inside the Browns Beat. And, it's only a matter of time before we do this again.
Guys, always fun to be on. Thanks for the time. And always, Fred, thanks for joining us all the time on Off the Leash. That's our Browns podcast over on 19 News.
Yeah, it's great. So thanks again. See ya.
Thanks, Robbie.
See ya.
Big shout out to Mark Schwab again. Off the Leash, great show. Fred's on there all the time. They do great stuff. And Mark, obviously, fellow Rocky River Pirate. So I'll always give him a little bit of love for that. But yeah, I think the conversation just shows you. It's why I love these conversations. It just shows you, though, that there is no. It's not a consensus conversation right now. It is opinions are all over the place on what people think the Browns should do, what they want the Browns to do, and I feel like, obviously the noise probably isn't that loud in the building, but there's a lot of different directions this can go, and I think that's also the part of people kind of freaking out. As far as the fact that they haven't gotten the coach yet and they still have to do the Rooney Rule and everybody's worried about this and that is because, I think Mark that was the best point he made, was that there's no indicator of what direction they're going to go.
Yeah. there's, and I've been doing this long enough and gone through a lot of these hiring. Next week, if we have a new coach here with the Browns, half our people will hate the hiring and half of them will love the hiring. And that's it. And that's what makes it go, that the Browns is such a hot button that at least there's no apathy. It's not like nobody could, we're in the middle of January and we have several hundred, people on live with us, and we'll have 1,000 people watching this, and we appreciate that. But we're talking Browns. What are they going to do again?
Yeah, listen, we're going to find out, and we're going to hang on to see, and you're going to hang on with us as we get through this again. I think by the time the show hits this time next week, we may still not know at that point, because again, you're going to have to set up times with a guy like Shieldhouse, who, his team's got a game on Sunday, and they're going to have that window to talk to him. But I think a lot of clarity is going to come over the next few days on. You may hear some more names get dropped into the pod as far as people the Browns are talking to, and we'll see. We'll see where it goes. But Fred, last word on where we're at right now with the Browns and the coaching search.
I just think, until I see different, I still think they like Jim Schwartz, and I wouldn't be surprised when the dust settles, he's the head coach. And I think I still think this is a piece of the puzzle. They're trying to see, would Odzinski take the job as offensive coordinator, maybe assistant head coach, get that promotion, or a Shieldhouse with that. You have the veteran, you have the young up and coming fixing the offense. Could go the other way, but I cannot see Schwartz staying if they hire somebody different as the offense, as the head coach, and say, hey, we want you to stay as the assistant, unless he just really loves that role. As I was mentioning, Patton, a lot of these guys now, coordinators, they end up after they've been head coach, sometimes just don't want to do all that administrative and meet with the media. They just want to coach, get paid a lot of money, and just do their thing and not have to fool with it. I think Schwartz has indicated he wants to be a head coach. So if he gets passed over, I don't know if I'd see him staying.
Hey, listen, and again, it's just been the other part of the conversation. This is my opinion, Fred, but that's not the way you go about getting the head coach you want. If the head coach you want is Jim Schwartz, great. If the head coach you fall in love with is a different name, maybe it's Sean McDermott, maybe it's Udinski, maybe it's Shieldhouse, maybe it's another guy that we don't even know about yet. If you fall in love with somebody else, but they say, yeah, but I'm going to want to bring in my own defensive coordinator. And they say,
I think they should.
I'm not real comfortable with Jim Schwartz on the, which I don't know that they would say it like that, but if that's what they say, sweet. If that's the guy you want, if that's the guy that you sold to you on him being the head coach for the future of the Cleveland Browns, see ya. There's so much conversation going on about how the coordinators factor into the head coach search that we are so putting the cart before the horse here. You get the head coach first, period.
But then you got to say, is the 30-year-old going to be able to put together a staff, and all these things? So it does. If you love this guy, then you hire him.
And then I bet you $1,000. Bet you $1,000, and that's a lot for me because I got kids. I bet you a lot of money that with the defense they have out there, it would not be real hard. We've talked about how hard it might be to get a head coach or an offensive coordinator because of the roster out there. When defensive coaches look at the defensive roster, I don't think it's going to be that hard.
Well, that's interesting. It's like, I'm not surprised Kevin Stefanski kept the guy they wanted him to keep, because that's kind of how I felt he was here. He just worked. Okay, that's what we'll do. He didn't say, look, we're doing this. So right. I kind of think that the guys should pick who they want. I agree with that. So if you go with one of these offensive minded coaches, let them get whoever they want. Don't force them on them, because if you think that highly, they're ready to take over and run the thing, let them run the thing.
And that's where you run into situations when you force things upon coaches like that. That's where you run into the Todd Haley, Hugh Jackson situations that we saw on Hard Knocks that year of Hugh Jackson having to argue with his coaching staff because they were picked some other way about how he's driving the bus. He's the one behind the steering wheel now. Okay. That's how you run into that situation. So I hope they don't. I hope that isn't as big of a factor with them as it is amongst the talking points. Anyways, Fred, let's knock this out for this episode. It was awesome. It flew by. I feel like we started 15 minutes ago. But this episode of Inside the Browns Beat, we got to give our thank yous out before we get out of here. First of all, big thank you to our special guest, Mark Schwab from Channel 19, from Barking Browns. Just make sure you're following Schwabi. Make sure you interact with Schwabi. He's great and just one of the more fun Cleveland media people that we have out there. So gave great insight, had a great time with Schwabi. Big time thank you to him for coming in. Next thank you goes out to the OBR. Get over to the OBR.com. Make sure you hit subscribe. Make sure you are locked in and following the YouTube channel, the Twitch, the X, whatever. And again, while you do that, if you're over on X, please stop over to our new show page, Browns Beat OBR, at Browns Beat OBR. Give it a follow. You're going to want to stay tuned for some fun changes and fun ideas that Fred and I have come up with for how this show is going to go in the offseason. So make sure you are following there as well. And our biggest thank you, as always, goes out to all of you, everybody that tuned in live with us tonight on Twitch and YouTube. Thank you for doing that, and X and Facebook. Thank you for doing that. We loved having you here. If you catch us later on the podcast version or just on demand, we love that you're tuning in, even if you couldn't be with us live. Again, go take a break. 53 minutes from now, we're going to be right back here with the Garage Beers podcast with our friend Cameron Justice from Channel 5. We're going to talk more Cleveland Browns, more coaching, what she's hearing, and all that. And you know, Cameron always gives great insight. So make sure you tune in to Garage Beers at 9 o'clock. But that's going to do it for us here on Inside the Browns Beat. For Fred Greetham, I am Michael Keefe saying thanks for joining us, and go Browns as always.